Hey, everybody. I'm Jonathan Last from the Bulwark, and I am joined today by the first of these Substack Live inter-Substack conversations. I mean, possibly the last one, too, if it doesn't go well. And I'm joined by Jim Acosta, who I have watched for, I don't know, it feels like my entire life, of the Jim Acosta Show, also here on Substack. If you're a Bulwark person who does not follow Jim, please go do so. Please sign up for Substack. It's great stuff.
Thank you.
So the way we're going to do this is we're going to talk for a
Yeah,
few minutes, and
sure.
then we're going to play dueling AMAs, Ask Me Anythings. And while we were in the green room, Jim, you said to me that you think we're going to get through this okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm a cautious optimist. I tend to think that, and maybe, I watched too many movies in the 1980s, when Rocky beats Ivan Drago at the end of Rocky 4 and so on, that, that at the end of the day, sort of like Winston Churchill once said famously, or maybe he didn't say it, but it's attributed to him, that the American people eventually do the right thing after exhausting all options. And
Hmm.
I tend to think that we're going to get through this. Now, during the first Trump administration, I had a colleague ask me, how the hell are we going to get through this? And my response was, and it still is, we just have to outlast him. We just have to outlast him. And I know that might not be the most inspiring thing in the world. It's not exactly something you can put on a bumper sticker on a billboard, but I do believe, and I'm going to be talking about this on my show later today, that if we hold firm, stand our ground, and defend something as simple as what I describe as the American way of life, I think that message will get through to people, and that is what gives me hope. That's what gives me some optimism, and that is not to say it is going to be hell on earth for the next several months, maybe even a couple of years. Um, but I think you have to enter into that with that kind of an attitude. Or what the hell?
Okay,
You might as
well,
well, then you're just giving up hope, and you're, getting in the fetal position, and that's it. I don't do that. Yeah.
okay, well, I live in the fetal position, and I'm gonna try to break you today because that's what I
Yeah.
do. I am the Prince of Darkness.
That's just like Rocky, right? When he goes, "I will break you."
Yeah,
But anyway,
yeah,
yeah.
I
Okay.
I must break
We have
you.
a theme there. Yeah.
So we have news right before we came on. We got news. The thing I've been obsessing over, I mean, honestly, since the fall of 2020 is when I first started really worrying about Trump testing the Supreme Court. And
Yeah.
I've written about it over and over. And over the years, I've had people tell me that I'm crazy and it's Trump derangement syndrome. And
Hmm.
then in 2022, JD Vance gave that interview to Jack Murphy, the guy who liked to get pegged. And not that there's anything wrong with it. And
Yeah.
he said that if he could give Donald Trump one piece of advice, because he said, I think Trump's going to be president again. If I give him one piece of advice, it would be
Yeah.
fire everybody. And when the Supreme Court tells you you can't do it, tell them, the Chief Justice has made his ruling. Now let him try to enforce it. And then Trump went and made this guy his vice president. And Vance, over the weekend, said that he reiterated it that the president, the Supreme Court cannot, no court can constrain the legitimate power of the president. Who decides whether or not it's legitimate? The president
Yeah.
does. Whoa, who knew? And so we have a constitutional crisis, my view, maybe not yours,
No,
unfolding
I
right
agree.
now.
Yeah.
In that you have an executive which is essentially unchecked and which is fomenting a showdown with the courts. And
Yeah.
right now, so this is what just happened. So we had the Doge attempt to shut down all payments. Part of this was FEMA. FEMA grants were supposed to stop going out.
Yeah.
There was a lawsuit brought against the Trump administration. A judge issued a temporary restraining order saying, no, you have to give out these grants while we adjudicate things.
Hmm.
The Trump administration kept handing out the grants in defiance of this order. We went back in front of a judge yesterday, and the
Yeah.
judge said, you're not following the order. Stop it. I will pull this
Yeah.
car over. I will
Right.
pull this car over if you don't
We'll turn
stop
it around
stop
right
freezing
now.
grants.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll turn around right now. And then from NBC News, we got screenshots from memo going out within FEMA saying, no, hold those grants. And
Yeah.
I want to read to you something from the NBC report here. Public servants across federal agencies now find themselves caught between President Donald Trump's executive orders and federal judges who have blocked them, at least temporarily, until the courts can more fully determine whether the president has exceeded his legal authority. They face firing by the Trump administration if they defy him, and potential legal sanctions if they don't. What is the off ramp from this? Because I
Yeah.
look at this and this reads to me like the end of the republic.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
mean,
too much?
no,
Too hot?
I don't think so. And I think it could get a lot hotter. I do think we are in the middle of a constitutional crisis right now. It is a crisis of Trump's own making.
Yeah.
He is causing this to happen. His people are causing this to happen. They want it to happen. They want to test the bounds of our system of checks and balances. And it gets back to what I was saying earlier about the American way of life and how it has to be defended. You and I just didn't like beam down from a spaceship, and the United States of America was here in all its glory, with its system of government, its system of checks and balances, and so on. It had to be fought for. It had to be defended. It had to be preserved over the generations. And obviously, there were moments when the people had to rise up and demand that there be change. Civil rights movement, anti-war movements of the '60s and '70s, and even during the Iraq War. I do think what you're going to see here in the coming weeks is you're going to see, and people can say, "Oh, it's the resistance. You have TDS and so on." You're going to see the American people rise up and they're going to say, we don't want this. And you're going to see elected leaders respond as a result of it. I do think that's going to happen. When you have the president, and the American Bar Association put out a very strong statement last night. They
Yeah, I
don't
saw
do
that.
that sort of thing willy nilly, saying that, they don't get involved in politics. But this administration cannot just flout the rule of law. And that is exactly what it's doing right now. And so I do think our court system is there. It is still standing. And of course, they are going to try to blow past judges at the lower court levels and try to ride this thing up to the Supreme Court, where that MAGA majority is there that Donald Trump can always count on. It's his monopoly get out of jail free card. And I suspect when they get to the Supreme Court, this may not play out the way he thinks. He thinks it's going to play out the way the immunity decision did. I don't think you can have a president of the United States just getting rid of departments of the federal government, agencies that are part of the federal government that were created by Congress. And I suspect that the Supreme Court is going to say, oh, and here's my dog Duke jumping in here. He's entering the chat.
Oh, look at that. Dog content. This is how you get
Dog content.
subscribers on
This is it.
Substack.
This is
Dog
it.
content.
Totally. But, I suspect that is what the Supreme Court is going to say. And he's not going to get one of these, immunity Yahtzee decisions like he got during the campaign, which was which was completely ridiculous, by the way. But he feels emboldened. And look, Jonathan, look what happened during the campaign. Look what happened during the period when Joe Biden was president. Trump ran the table, played the courts like a fiddle, and was able to get off scot free. So why would he not want to try and do this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
Yeah,
my two concerns I have here. The first is
yeah,
that the American people basically want this. Not all of them, maybe not even half of them, but like
yeah.
35-40% of the American people actually want some sort of soft despotism.
I
And
I
when
I
you
do
have that
think there's
many
something to it.
people, it's hard to stop, like, even, it's hard to stop 35% of the country from getting what it wants over time.
Yeah, that's right. No, and but right before the election, I talked to Timothy Snyder about this, talked to Ann Applebaum about this, and one of these sad realities is that there is an audience for autocracy. There is an audience for
Oh
authoritarianism.
yeah.
There is a temptation on the part of any, any section of a civilized society to maybe experiment with a little fascism, and it is frightening, and it is not a good thing. But that's where I get back to the American way of life. I think there are just too many of us, folks who are on the center right, folks who are on the center left, people who just, maybe they didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. Maybe they didn't vote for Mitt Romney. Maybe they didn't vote for Jeb Bush. Maybe they didn't vote for John Kerry, but they kind of think American politics sort of belongs in between those two lines.
Right.
And they don't want to, you know, who the hell wants to go off in the direction of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and the crackpots on the right? They just don't. They just don't want to do it. And that is where Trump and his cohorts are right now. They are over there on the crackpot a crackpot part of the right, and they're driving everybody towards the cliff like Thelma and Louise. And I suspect, sure, they may drive the car off the cliff, but I suspect there are going to be enough Americans between now and then who are going to say, we don't want this. This is not what we signed up for. Who the hell
I hope
signed up
so.
for invading Greenland and taking over the Panama Canal in Canada? We didn't even have that conversation during the campaign. So
Yeah.
I saw this when I covered him the first time around when I was a White House correspondent. He always bites off more than he can chew. He always falls flat on his face. I was talking to James Carville yesterday about this. He was saying, just let Trump go and do that. To some extent, yes, go ahead and let him do that. But I think between now and then, the there is a need for pushback, and people have to push back, and there's just no other way around it.
Yeah, I agree. Just to close this
Yeah,
out, were you surprised to find that there's an audience for strongman politics in America? Because I was. I mean, I
yeah,
wasn't surprised yesterday, but I was surprised, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, when we started this wonderful journey we've all been on together, and
yeah.
I
The
can't
ride down the
tell if
golden escalator, as he likes to
yeah,
call
yeah,
it.
I can't tell if this was just because I
Yeah,
was stupid and naive, or blinkered, or blind spots, or whatever, or if something changed. And I've still, I've spent the better part of a decade wrestling this, and I still haven't come to any real conclusions. How about you? I
yeah.
mean, were you surprised by it, or is this
I,
like a human nature thing that you were tuned to and you always knew?
yeah, I mean, I was out on the campaign trail with it. I mean, I've been to more Trump rallies than just about anybody. And one of the things that dawned on me during the 2016 campaign, I saw it again during the 2020 campaign, is that there is an appetite. There is a very strong appetite for the kind of stuff that he dishes out, the poisonous, toxic stuff that he dishes out. It is very depressing to think about. I had a lot of trouble sleeping when I was out on the road during those campaign cycles because I just thought to myself, why in God's name am I seeing my fellow Americans chant lock her up? Why in God's name am I hearing my fellow Americans go after the press and boo the press and come up to our press pen and call us traitor and so on? This kind of stuff is intoxicating and it is addictive. And, I was just having lunch with a friend of mine, came out of the diplomatic community. And I think what we all have to continue to do is keep telling the Republicans who are out there who are not at the place where they're willing to stand up against Donald Trump at this point. And I'm going to talk about this on my show later today. We have to keep telling those folks, I'm counting on you. I know you have it in you. Um, uh, Forgive me for sounding like your kid's baseball coach, but I, I really think if that message is just drilled into the heads of Republicans over the next several years, I think we are going to see somebody from in that party at some point have that kind of profile and courage moment. That's my hope. You may say, Jim, you're naive. This is Pollyannish, pie in the sky stuff. What are you smoking? Give it up. But I just have too much faith in this country to give up on that notion. And maybe you and I will have a conversation a couple years from now and you'll be like, Acosta, you were wrong. Let's play that tape.
We'll be in the
You were
camps
so wrong.
together. Yeah, you'll be in the cell next to me, and yeah.
But I just think it could happen, and I don't want to give that up. And I know there are folks on the left who are going to say, Jim, that's nonsense. It's not going to happen. But I don't want to give up on that notion. If it's okay, if people can just give me a pass on that for right now. We're all coping with this in different ways. But
Sure.
is Sean Hannity going to come on the 9 o'clock program tonight and be like, I just had a come to Jesus moment. Wow, an epiphany. It just hit me like a lightning bolt. Trump, no, that's not going to happen. But I do think we're going to reach that turning point, at some that crossroads at some point between now and then. I have too much faith in this country to think otherwise. And forgive me for being that way.
No, it's
Yeah,
great. Well, this is
yeah,
great because so we're gonna do little ask me anything. I'm gonna ask you three questions. You're gonna ask me three
yeah,
questions. We'll trade back and forth. And this actually leads me to the first thing I want to ask you.
yeah,
It does not surprise me to hear you talk this way because you and your family have a quintessentially American story. So your dad comes here from Cuba right around the
yeah,
Cuban Missile Crisis, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so your dad leaves Castro's Cuba, and his son stands in front of Raul Castro, Fidel's brother, and grills him on human rights abuses.
Yeah.
which is one of the most American things I've ever heard.
That's
Uh,
thank you. That's very nice.
and so what was that like for you? I mean, did you feel the
Yeah.
weight of like your entire family history having led you to
Yes.
that moment? But it must have
Also,
been
my
utterly
yeah.
surreal. And I don't know, can you just walk that through me as like as a personal thing, what you felt inside with that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I was covering the Obama trip to Cuba in 2016 when this happened. Um, I kind of got a notion from the Correspondents Association folks who were there that, well, I might get a question, so I better get ready. I was like, okay, maybe I should ask um, Castro a hardball question here. And I thought to myself, if I'm the son of a Cuban refugee, how could I not ask him about political prisoners? I just,
Yeah.
I could, so tell me about the tourism industry. I don't think I would have been able to come home and look my dad in the eye, look at other family members of mine in the eye, and held my chin up. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. And I did it. And the toughest part of that was working up the gumption to do it. The other tough part is I'm not fluent in Spanish, and I wish I were. It's just like growing up as a Cuban American in America in the 70s and 80s. It was just like not. It was like you
Yeah.
should be American. We're going to Americanize you. My name should be Acosta. I go by Acosta, and so on. And it was like I was trying to get it out in my broken Spanish, which I try as best as I can to get across. It came out okay because he pulled the headphones off and he's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Obama's looking at me like, "I hope you can get out of here, okay, Jim." Um, and Ben Rhodes, who was the deputy national security advisor at the time, um, reaches across to me after I'm done and hands me his BlackBerry. And I look at it and goes, "At least you tried." And I was like, "Okay, that's a close as you get to a compliment from Ben Rhodes." I handed him back the BlackBerry. But it was extraordinary because Castro was saying, give me a list," and there were people there at the event who said, "I can help you out. The lists are out there. Give me a break." And then there were press reports and so on saying, "Here's the list, Raul Castro. Give me a break." But yeah, I'm very proud of my Cuban heritage. My mom's side of the family, they also have an immigrant story as well. They came through Ellis Island, and so yeah, I do. I definitely. That's part of why I guess I operate the way I do. It's just in my
Yeah.
nature to care about this stuff.
All right, your turn.
I think of the Bulwark as kind of is it a right-leaning thing? Forgive me for asking something that's really dumb, because I feel like there are a lot of, traditional conservatives in the Bulwark, and what is to me gratifying, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is to see folks who they're passionate about their convictions. And I guess what is it about the Bulwark that you enjoy, when it comes to working there?
Yeah, I don't think we're center right anymore. We
Yeah.
certainly were when we started because we were like five people from the Weekly Standard after the Weekly Standard
Mm,
folded up. But my vision for it has always been much more like I wanted us to be the Atlantic's JV team. My goal was
yeah.
not to be a center right publication. My goal was to be something like the Atlantic or
Yeah.
like the Michael Kinsley era New Republic. You and I are old enough to remember that.
I love
Um,
it. Yeah, Crossfire,
so
sure.
I wanted it to be very much a center thing. And this is born of a couple things. First of all, is when we started the Bulwark, the idea was like, well, we're going to save conservatism, and I think we realized pretty quickly that that was probably a lost
Mm,
cause. It's like
interesting.
yeah, there are conservative ideas which are eternal and et cetera. But in terms of what conservative movement was, the conservative movement was gone by that point. It was
Yeah.
already MAGAfied. Maybe other conservatives didn't realize it that soon, but we did.
And
And
MAGA
we've
is not
hired
conservative, right? I mean, that's
well, I mean, so there are a lot of people
yeah.
who want to make this argument and say, well,
Yeah.
that's not real conservatism. And
Yeah.
honestly, I don't have a lot of patience with that. Like
Mm,
it's like popular usage of words. Like awesome means awesome, like in the way that we all use it. It no longer means the fear of God, right? Or if it does,
yeah.
like it's in a specialized context. Like I'm
Yeah.
perfectly willing to grant MAGA the ownership of the word conservative because that's where all the people who are really conservative live. Like what used to be
Yeah.
considered conservative is now really, to the extent we ever talk about it, we call it classical liberalism or something.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. And so we got a bunch of people who are conservative-ish, like Mona Charen and Bill Kristol and Andrew Egger and Sarah Longwell, and then we've got people like Will Salatan and me. And I was never really conservative to begin with. I was always
Hmm.
sort of the house communist at the Weekly Standard. And it was because,
Yeah.
I was vaguely conservative-ish in my disposition, but I believed all the Catholic social justice stuff,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so that didn't really fit
I got a
well with
lot of Catholic
conservatism.
guilt too. No question
Yeah,
about it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know. So, you and I are almost the same age. You're a little bit older than me, and
Interesting.
you cut your teeth. You went from radio to TV,
Hmm.
and you did that thing that used to have to happen in television, which is
Yeah.
that you bounce around from affiliate to affiliate in small as you work your way up the ladder.
Yeah.
What did you So there is a print version of that too. Like there are people who start out at like the
Absolutely.
Orlando Sentinel on the crime desk and then move out, and eventually they wind up in the New York Times Foreign Affairs Bureau or something like that.
Yep.
I didn't do that. I had a very different background, which is I went straight to like sort of magazine journalism, which is a
Yeah.
separate discipline. But what did you learn about your medium? Like, what did you learn about doing TV and how to do broadcast journalism from that upbringing?
Yeah. I was very fortunate because my very first station was at WBIR in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Mm.
And they were the number one station in the market. I think they still are to this day, dominant station, and some really good journalists there. And they really taught me how to be a journalist. The news director would say, "Go down to City Hall and find some sources. Go down to the cop shop. Find out what's going on with this." And I really learned how to develop sources, break the occasional story, get exclusive interviews, and it was just a great. It was like a master's program in television journalism, and I was able to take that experience, go to Dallas. I had always been sort of fascinated with Texas and the Kennedy assassination. I was a huge like JFK fan growing up. And to me, like going to Dallas, it was like, you know, going to a place where the myth of JFK kind of still lives. If anybody who's been to Dallas, been to the Texas Book Depository, the Sixth Floor Museum, and so on, that was in the 90s, and it was just a really interesting. And then the other thing that was interesting that was happening when I was in Dallas is George W. Bush was the governor and was preparing to run for president.
Oh, that's
So
right. Yeah.
yeah, so I covered a lot of that, and so I kind of got my taste in covering a first taste in covering national politics there, covering him as governor. I asked him some questions at a press conference, and he got mad at me, and it was like it was sort of like the early stages of me being a troublemaker. Went to Chicago, worked at WBBM, great station there with a long tradition. Worked with Carol Marine, and she's just a dynamite journalist. Was on 60 Minutes too when that show existed at that time, and so I was just lucky every step of the way to be able to like kind of put the tools in the tool belt and have people who were like, what you just did there, that sucked. Can you do it again? And it was just a lot of people now, they get out of college and they're like, I want to be on the network. Can I have my own show now? And
I'm just gonna go to Twitch and TikTok, right? No, that's literally
well,
what
and
it is. Yeah.
a lot of them can do that now too, which is actually really cool. But I had the luck of working with really great journalists every step of the way. And then, of course, I made it to CBS News, and very early on, as a young guy, way too young, working with the likes of Dan Rather and Bob Schieffer, and just really learned a lot at every step of the way. And to me, I tell people like, I know you don't want to do this. It's kind of a pain in the ass to move from town to town. I had, moving stickers on top of moving stickers on the boxes that I would move from place to place. You don't get holidays and weekends and so on, but it's a great way to learn how to do this.
Yeah. All right, you go.
Yeah. Um, I guess let's go back to where we were at the beginning. You're not optimistic. You're pessimistic, or are you being a little facetious?
No, I'm pretty pessimistic.
Okay.
I feel like, did you ever read the Whitaker Chambers book Witness, which is uh,
No.
so
Yeah.
Whitaker Chambers, this is the Cold War book. He was a communist spy who
Hmm.
turned stateside. He snitched on Alger Hiss. This is the
Interesting. Oh,
shorthand for
okay.
it.
Okay.
And he wrote a memoir of his journey, and absolutely fascinating. To anybody who hasn't read it, you should. I think it's hard to understand 20th century America without reading it, because
Mm,
his experience in World War One is what creates his turn to communism. Because the horrors of World War One. I mean, when we, from where we sit now, look back on World War Two, we think how could you have everybody running to fascism and socialism, across the globe?
Yeah.
It seems crazy. These two ideologies are horrible and would lead to nothing but misery and death. And the answer is that in World War One, we had like normal life, and that led to the most unimaginable slaughter anybody had ever seen. And so people were willing to try
Yeah.
anything new and different. And Hiss was one of them. Or so Whittaker Chambers was one of them. Anyway, point of all this
Interesting.
is when Whittaker Chambers finally leaves the Communist Party, he says to his wife, you know, we're leaving the winning side for the losing side, but I feel like I
Yeah.
can't do anything else. And that's basically how I feel. Like,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
this is the right thing, and what are you gonna do? Like do the wrong thing? But
Yeah.
I'm not super optimistic. All right, last
Yeah.
question for you, because we're already
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
long.
Okay.
Tell me
Sorry,
one
I talk a
thing.
lot. I
No,
always say,
no, I
forgive
love
me
it.
for comprehensive answers.
I love it. Uh, Tell me one thing about TV news that most people don't know.
Oh Lord. It's a lot of being outside.
Oh.
And I don't mean to be too lighthearted about it, but I would be at the White House and people would say, are you really standing in front of the White House when you're doing those live shots? And I'd be like, yeah, yeah, I am. Whether it's 9 degrees or 96 degrees, I'm standing there outside the White House. And, it's just, now have a coat closet full of trench coats and overcoats that I do not wear anymore. And I don't know what to do with them. I should make a quilt out of them or something. Sail for a sailboat or something, something
That's awesome.
crazy like that. And I every once in a while will open up and I just grab the same damn coat to go outside. And it's like, I could wear like 8 different coats here. And it's because you get into your head, well, I can't wear the same damn coat every day. That'll look ridiculous. So I better have a gray
Oh,
one and
okay.
a black one. And so there, the and I when I was a local reporter in Chicago, I said, I know for a fact, as much as I love the Windy City and I love the people there, it's a great, great town. There's no way I could be a reporter here long term. It is too damn cold in the
Too cold, right?
wintertime.
Yeah.
And they would put me outside the police station, Chicago police station, in the middle of the night to do live shots, and it would be like 4 degrees in a wind chill of like -15. And the EP would be like, Jim, can you take the hat off and the earmuffs so we can see? I mean, I'm like, I'd go home and be like, my brain is numb from just like being frozen, and I need to stick my head in the bathtub. But that is something to be reckoned with that I don't think people quite fully understand. When I covered Katrina, I'll give you one more.
Yeah.
I was doing a live shot after Katrina, and we're in front of this police station. The neighborhood is blown to shit. I'm standing on this. The photographer's like, stand over here. I've got this great shot. This car's flipped upside behind you, and so on, upside down behind you. Stand on this little mud pile here, and you're going to walk and talk, and tell us what's going on. And of course, I'm standing there for like 5 minutes because I'm waiting for my live shot, and I feel this tingle in my legs, and I'm like, oh boy, what's that? I I do my live shot. I look down, both of my legs covered in fire ants up to my knees, up
Oh
to my nether
no.
regions, the whole 9 in the parking lot of this police station in Biloxi, Mississippi. I ripped my pants off, ripped my shoes and socks off, and very quickly put some, like shorts on. And because I had a fire ant attack from standing on a pile of fire ants during a live shot. And it just goes to like, you think, I'm just going to meticulously prepare this live shot and everything I'm going to say is just going to be perfect. And you have fire ants crawling up God knows where. So
What a pro. What a pro though. You never broke. You just like kept
one of my
charging
feet
through.
swelled up like a grapefruit,
Oh
and
my
we
goodness.
were living on a boat for like 2 weeks after Katrina. And CBS, I was working for at that time, they brought in a producer who brought in like all these antibiotics and stuff because I had to like my foot looked like the Elephant Man. It was like that awful,
Good
and I was
Lord.
wearing Tevas and stuff because I couldn't get my foot in my shoes. So I always tell people like being outside is the thing that people don't quite get. It's just it is that primal.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to cheat you
Yeah,
out of your last question because that's the best story. We're not going to top that. Jim Acosta from the Jim Acosta Show.
yeah,
Thank you for joining us. Everybody who
great to see you.
tuned in here, thank you so much, guys. If
Yep.
you're at the Bulwark, go give Jim a follow. And we are going to do
Okay.
another one of these live shows. I assume if people like it, probably on Thursday, and we'll talk some more.
Cool.
Catch you later, Jim. Thanks for being with me. Good luck,
Good to talk
America.
to you, Jonathan.